We're in section 2.6, talking about student loans, and I'm assuming that you've already looked through the chapter and you're semi-familiar with all of the terms. But I'd like to explore and make sure that we really understand these two different options, whether or not a loan is subsidized and whether or not it's capitalized. So you're going to want the student loan example handout. So if you don't have that, pause the video, pull it up, and then we'll go through it together. So when a person gets a student loan for a certain amount, payment is not expected until after the time in school is over. So during that time, while you're in school, you have the privilege of using that money, and you don't have to start paying it back yet. However, for the privilege of using that money, you owe interest. So if the government pays that interest for you, your loan is subsidized. Let's fill that in. Now this is just the interest while you're in school. If the government does not pay your interest, then you could either have your loan capitalized or not. If it is capitalized, then all the interest from while you're in school, you just kick that can down the road and say, add it to my bill later. Or you could pay interest while you're in school. If you do that, your loan is unsubsidized and also not capitalized. So if I've paid interest during school, then when it comes time to start making payments on my loan, my principal is still the same as that original price tag loan that I got. If the government paid that interest while I was in school, then my principal is still the same. But if nobody paid that interest, then the interest from while you're in school gets added on to that original lump that you borrowed at the beginning. And so now when you start making payments, your loan, your principal, is actually higher. Now we're going to go with the typical term of 10 years of a student loan. And monthly payments, there's 12 in a year, and that's where we get a total of 120 payments on this student loan. So if we want to find out what those monthly payments are, let's look at an example. This is on your handout that you've got. We'd like to find, let's see. First of all, let's figure out how much interest we're talking here, whether or not the government pays it or I pay it now, later. How much interest is that? We know that using our interest formula, the interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. And for this example, our principal is $6,500. Our rate is 6.8%. I'm going to move the decimal over. And our question that's still hanging is what is T? So T is how much time until we start paying our monthly payments. So in this case, we graduate in May. and we get 6 months deferred. There's time to get a job or whatever. That means that November 15, that's when we start paying. So we had almost 4 years in school. We started in August, ended in May. Then when we tack on 6 months, we end up with a total of 4 years and 3 months. Now T is the number of years. So 4 years and 3 months would be T equals 4 and 3/12, right? Which is the same thing as 4.25. But you know, not every month is the same length. A year is not evenly divided by 12 for each month. Some months are longer than others. So if we pull out a calendar and we look at May through November, actually, if we have 4 whole years, then we're ending 4 years after we began the loan in August. So when we look at how long August is, how long September is, how many days are in October, we look at how many days are between the end of that 4th year and November 15. We've got 92 days. So a more accurate way of describing this time would be 4 years and 92 days. So if I write it like that, T is 4 and 92 365.2 fifths. Now, why am I putting 365.25 in the denominator instead of just 365? 92 days out of 365 total. Well, maybe it occurred to you that not every year has 365 days. Every 4th year we have a leap year. Then it's 366. So instead of having to mess with funky things of some years we have this many days and some years we have this many days, we just say, well, a year has 365.25 days. And then we don't have to worry about whether or not leap year fell where and when. So this, if I figure this up, I can just use my calculator. It's really very similar to when I was just counting with months. And really, it probably wouldn't change my numbers very much. I think it ends up changing it by like a few cents by the time we get through this whole problem. So one question that we deal with as mathematicians is how exact do we need to be? And it's not a real clear answer. The more exact you are, usually the more accurate you are. But also, the more exact you are is usually makes it more difficult. Like it's harder to do in your head. So that's really kind of, you have to weigh the situation. It's a judgment call. In this problem, if you were doing it for me and you just did 4 3/12 and you did 4.25 instead of 4.25188, I would be happy with the result that you got. It would be fine. In fact, even this 4.2511188 is an approximation because really those decimal places go even further, but I've just rounded. So that's something to always just kind of keep in mind. In the big picture, what do we have here? We're talking about like 1,000th of a day. You could even, if this is something that's really important, you could figure it a couple of ways. If it's something that's really important, then maybe you would want to be more accurate. So let's go ahead and figure out our interest. Now we know, I'm in take that t value and plug it in. So we've got 6,500 times 0.068 times 4.25188. And I'm just going to put all that in my calculator and figure it up. You know, you might pause the video and plug it in and see if you got the same thing that I get. Is that what you got? Okay, so when we are, let's go back here. When we're talking about whether or not we pay as we go while we're in school or not, this is that difference. Am I willing to pay that much money, like split up through my years at school, or do I need to add it to my bill later? If I do, then I will have a higher principal. So let's fill in our chart here. If my loan is unsubsidized and not capitalized, then I am paying $1,879.33 while I'm in school. If my loan is capitalized, I'm paying 0 interest while I'm in school because I'm adding that money to my bill. So my principal, if I've paid the interest all along, is going to stay the same that it was to begin with. Whereas if my loan is capitalized, then it's that original amount plus the interest that I did not pay along the way. Put an equal sign in there. There we go. Now, if my loan is subsidized, yes, there was this much interest, but I didn't pay it, the government did. And since somebody paid it, then my balance, my principal here has not changed.